Salut Paola, c'est un test de la salle W. J'aimerais savoir si tu peux m'entendre quand je suis en train de parler au micro.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Amash? Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to one of the first session of this year's public forum. We're very excited to have you at this discussion called Towards Ethical and Inclusive Trade, a focus on Indigenous peoples, traditional cultural expressions, and fashion. My name is Chloe Mukai. I'm a senior program officer at ITC's Ethical Fashion Initiative. Along with my co-moderator, Daphne Zografos Johnson, we're really excited to have you here to what we are sure will be a very interesting conversation. We have some panelists that traveled from all over the world to be part of this conversation. We have Linda Munn, a Maori artist and activist. We have James Johnson, a Tlingit artist from Alaska. And we have Fatuma Sawadogo Maiga, who is representing a consortium of weavers from Burkina Faso. We hope that through these conversations, we will be able to see how having some mutually beneficial collaboration models can lead to new opportunities in trade and partnerships. So thank you so much. The order of the day will be that we will start with some opening remarks from the organizing institutions, ITC and WIPO, followed by a 45-minute panel discussion. We hope we'll have some time at the end for a brief Q&A. And I would also take the opportunity to inform you that from 11 a.m. this morning, we will be launching our experience space over at the Delegates Lounge, just across from here in the atrium, where you'll be able to meet these artists and some other people with some live demonstrations and products on display. So I would now like to invite ITC's Executive Director, Pamela Cook-Hamilton. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's really good to see you here. I know it's 9 o'clock, so it's a little early for most. Good morning. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We're here today to have a conversation whose importance cannot be overstated and which seeks to lay the groundwork for a new vision of ethical and inclusive trade. There are 476 million Indigenous people spread out across the globe, from New Zealand to Alaska, from Brazil to Canada. They're weavers and artisans, as you've heard on stage, wood carvers, kava farmers, and tourism experts. And you're welcome to have some kava later, not too early in the morning, because then you won't focus. But we're very happy to have you here. They are the holders of knowledge, cultural expressions, and stories that have been handed down over centuries, even millennia. They're the ones who are often teaching us the best ways to care for our environment, which are urgent lessons in our current ecological crisis. And today, many of them live in extreme poverty. Many are seeing the natural environments that they have spent generations protecting being destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Many are seeing their traditional knowledge and cultural expressions being exploited by others for profit. And more often than not, their voices aren't included in decision-making processes, both nationally and internationally. We must do better, and that starts right now. At ITC, we've worked with the Indigenous peoples and traditional communities in Peru, Myanmar, Guyana, and Suriname for years, often with broader projects in a country or region. And we soon realized that if we really wanted to do right by these communities, we needed a dedicated Indigenous peoples strategy, one shaped by Indigenous peoples themselves. So we teamed up with Columbia University and met with Indigenous peoples representatives and groups from Brazil to Ecuador to Panama to put this strategy together. And based on this strategy, we have a pilot project underway in Ecuador where we'll be supporting the women from the Association of Waorani Women of the Ecuadorian Amazon so they can meet the quality requirements of a buyer who has committed to buying their cocoa. A collaboration that emerged after we met with this association at last year's public forum. Our strategy captures several lessons that will guide our work going forward. Critically, it recognizes that one of the most important assets Indigenous peoples have at their disposal, their traditional knowledge and cultural expressions, is in urgent need of protection. It's why we're working closely with our friends at WIPO, and why I'm delighted to be sharing the stage today with Assistant Director General Edward Kwakwa. Thank you, Edward. WIPO has been a trailblazer in this area. Earlier this year, they achieved a historic agreement to protect genetic resources and associated traditional knowledge, and are continuing that work to craft international legal protections for traditional cultural expressions. What makes that treaty so remarkable isn't just what it commits governments to do, critical as that is, but that Indigenous peoples were in the room throughout that process, driving and shaping the conversation. That's an example we can and must learn from, including at this year's WTO Public Forum. This week, many of you will have busy schedules, shuttling between panel discussions and plenary sessions and workshops. These are important conversations and on a theme that reflects both the challenges of our time and the future we want as a society. But it's not enough to just talk about how we'll make reglobalization happen and achieve better trade for a better world. We also need to do something about it, and that begins with meeting the people we serve. For 15 years, our Ethical Fashion Initiative has been connecting marginalized artisan communities, often living far from even local markets, to world-famous fashion brands like Ferragamo or Vivienne Westwood. These connections are made possible thanks to a growing network of social enterprises and fashion hubs, including Cabes, a social enterprise headquartered in Ouagadougou that runs production centers throughout Burkina Faso and serves as the umbrella for over 80 women-led cooperatives of weavers. Today on this panel, you'll be hearing from our longtime friend, Fatuma Sawadogo Maiga, representing Cabes today. Bienvenue. You'll hear from Linda Munn from Aotearoa. Yes, am I pronouncing it right? Aotearoa. Aotearoa. Can you pronounce it for me? Aotearoa, New Zealand, about her art reflects into the Rangitaratanga principles and spirituality in Maori life. And I really look forward to seeing and hearing that. We'll have a demonstration right after this, and I think it will be beautiful. You hear from James Johnson, who we just spoke to, and we saw his beautiful workmanship on the Vans label. Cool. I'll tell my son. He likes Vans. And he's a famed Tlingit artist and carver from Alaska, about how his work honors ancestral traditions. You'll also hear from my own ITC colleague, Chloe Mukai, about her work with the Ethical Fashion Initiative, and from WIPO's Daphne Zogravos Johnson on the legal landscape for traditional cultural expressions. Some of the Cabes textiles are on display this week at the public forum, and you can see the renowned Faso Danfani fabric at our experiences space in the WTO Delegates Lounge, which is to your left, and where? Across, left and, sorry, I'm spatially challenged. No idea what north, south, east, or west is. Anyway, at the experience space, you'll meet wood carvers from Alaska, cotton spinners with their cotton looms. It's awesome. And from Benin, weavers from Burkina Faso, and so many more. Listen to their stories. See what they make and why they make it. Ask them why trade matters to them. And take what you learn into the next sessions you attend at this public forum and wherever you go next. It's fitting that we're having this conversation in one of the world's most important decision-making centers, and in a country where we've witnessed some major milestones in Indigenous peoples' representation on the international stage. It was just over 50 years ago that Incomindios, the International Committee for the Indigenous Peoples of the Americas, was founded in Switzerland. It was 47 years ago that a group from the International Indigenous Treaty Council came here to attend the International NGO Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Peoples in the Americas, a pivotal moment ahead of the development of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And it was just 25 years ago that Colombia submitted the proposal which led to the negotiations for what is now WIPO's Treaty on Intellectual Property, Genetic Resources, and Associated Traditional Knowledge. This is a legacy that we must uphold and build on. That's what we're working to do here today and the months and years to come. And as we stand up for the rights and self-determination of Indigenous populations, let's also make sure we listen and learn. And let's make sure their approach to community and environment becomes part of ours too. I just want to also make one small addition to this. The person driving this in ITC, and you know, it all comes down to the fact that in a way, most of what drives us is personal. And it comes from personal experience, personal knowledge, and our why tends to emerge from that. And so, you know, Roberta's mother is Indigenous from Dominica, and it's one of the last remaining truly Indigenous communities in the Caribbean. And I want to just recognize that and thank her for that. A lot of times we forget where we come from, but Roberta has never forgotten, and it's been something that's been close to her heart. So I'm happy that this has come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very exciting to hear that last year's session led to the partnership with the Association of Women from the Ecuadorian Amazon. We hope that today's conversations can also lead to new ideas and maybe partnerships. I would like to now invite the Assistant Director General of WIPO, Mr. Edward Kwakwa. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Excellencies, dear guests, I haven't even started speaking and my voice has given up on me already. Good morning and a warm welcome to this exciting session co-hosted by the International Trade Center. I should say it's an honor to share the podium with Executive Director Pamela Cook-Hamilton. And Pamela, thanks for your insightful and very important remarks to lead us off in this joint session. Now, as you may all know, Pamela is the head of her organization, so she didn't need to explain anything else. She represents the ITC, she heads the ITC. I don't happen to be the head of my organization. And in the absence of the head of my organization, let me start by extending his regrets for not being here with us this morning. But he assures me, and this is Director General Darren Tang, he is here with us in spirit. And so let's assume he's with us. But I'll still go ahead and give opening remarks on his behalf and in the name of the World Intellectual Property Organization. Collaboration between ITC and WIPO goes way back. We've collaborated on just about everything. And in fact, earlier this year, we signed a memorandum of understanding, which, among other things, aims at bringing out the important work being done by Indigenous peoples and local communities. So it's a particular treat to join ITC to co-host this session. And we will, well, Pamela already talked about the space, what's it called? Experience space, yes. The experience space, we will also invite you to the experience space precisely because you'll be able to find out about the experiences of the Yakuoino. This is a virtual world and you can go deep with them into their virtual world where they'll talk about the work they are doing, the role the intellectual property system plays, particularly in the lives of Indigenous peoples and local communities. So that's something we would welcome you to attend. For WIPO, what we do is try and show support for the work of Indigenous peoples. In particular, we try and assist them point out the importance of their intellectual property assets. And these are assets ranging from traditional cultural expressions, experiences relating to traditional knowledge. Pamela mentioned the treaty that was adopted in May this year. We call it the WIPO Treaty on Intellectual Property, Genetic Resources, and Associated Traditional Knowledge. You may all know this is the first WIPO treaty that expressly mentions Indigenous peoples and local communities. It's the first WIPO treaty that talks about the interface between the intellectual property system and genetic resources. It's the first WIPO, well, it's a lot of firsts. Let me not get into it. But we are happy to talk some more about this particular treaty as we continue in the course of this week. We also try and help promote entrepreneurship by Indigenous peoples and local communities. So in this context, again, we are more than happy to have a panel this morning. And the panel, as we've been told, is co-moderated by Chloe, Mukai, and by my colleague, Daphne. The more I speak, the less they get to moderate the session. So let me try and be as brief as I can, and then I'll leave the podium and hand over to our co-moderators. I simply don't want to end without reminding us all the important assets that Indigenous people have. But in the same vein, let's all remember it's an unfortunate fact that the assets of Indigenous peoples tend to get appropriated from time to time and without recognition being given to them. So it's important we keep an eye on the ball. It's important we bring these issues to the attention of the international community. And in WIPO, one of the things we are doing is trying to engage the fashion industry on the one hand, with Indigenous peoples on the other hand. So in particular, last year, we had the first dialogue between the fashion industry and the Indigenous community. And it was such a successful dialogue. We are planning to replicate it, or let me not say replicate it, to have a second dialogue on the 25th of October this year, still having a dialogue among the fashion industry and the Indigenous community. And I invite you all to attend either in person or virtually if you are not able to attend in person. Let me end by simply saying, co-moderators, thank you for agreeing to do this today. We have very important topics to come up. And to our panelists, Pamela already mentioned their names. I don't need to mention them again. Let me thank you again for your time and in anticipation of your comments this morning. Distinguished delegates, participants, thank you very much for your attention, for joining us this morning, and we all look forward to a stimulating conversation. Thanks to our co-moderators. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. After these welcome words and this introduction of our distinguished panelists today, we're very excited to start this discussion and for you to get the opportunity to meet them and to interact with them. So ethical and inclusive trade is really an opportunity for Indigenous peoples around the world. But as Edward Kwakwa mentioned, traditional cultural expressions of Indigenous peoples have often been misappropriated. So misappropriation is one of the main concerns for Indigenous peoples around the world. And that is the use of their traditional cultural expressions without authorization, without benefit sharing, and sometimes in offensive ways. Now, in order to remedy that, of course, there are normative processes that can be followed, and there's a normative process that's ongoing at WIPO on that. But when you look at these issues, and these misappropriations can happen across various industries, really, sometimes they will happen in bad faith, but sometimes they just happen out of ignorance, with many companies not being sure how to approach Indigenous communities, to engage with them appropriately. They don't know how to go about it, and there's a lot of ignorance. And that's why a few years back in WIPO, we started a discussion between some of these companies from industry and Indigenous peoples to create understanding. So we use WIPO as a platform to create mutual understanding in these spaces, and the objective being to come with mutually beneficial collaborations between Indigenous peoples and community that would be fair and ethical for the communities. We started looking at the fashion industry, not to single it out. We were needed to start somewhere, and perhaps issues of appropriation are more visible than with other industries, but it's not to say that they don't happen in other industries. And so we started meeting with Indigenous communities to understand their concerns, meeting with fashion companies to also understand their perspectives. And we finally brought them together last year in WIPO for a high-level dialogue that was, from both sides' perspective, very useful. On that occasion, we also unveiled a document that we compiled with the support of both Indigenous communities and fashion companies. That's called Steps when considering the use of elements of Indigenous peoples' traditional cultural expressions in fashion. So the document contains 6 steps that it's important for fashion companies to research the cultural context of the elements of cultural expressions they wish to use, to conduct relational research when they will engage with the company, with the community. Who should they be talking to? Then building trust is a very important element, reaching an agreement, acknowledging the communities or the Indigenous artists, and also sharing benefits. And that can happen in different ways, either financially, of course, but there are also other ways to share benefits. And we're very happy to welcome here today James Johnson, because James has been part of these discussions since the very beginning. He's been member of the group discussions we've had with various communities, Indigenous communities from around the world. And so our first questions we would like to direct to James, and to ask him, James, why do you think it's important to have this guidance for fashion companies? What is the message that you'd like to get across to fashion companies with this work that you've been doing with other Indigenous peoples?
Yeah, Gunas Chish, let me formally introduce myself. Anish Ka, Yuhat Duasak, Flinkit, Flena, Dakla Wedi, Ayahat, Ish, Hutsnu Kwan, Yusati, Gunas Chish. My name is James Johnson. I'm Tlingit Indian from Southeast Alaska. I belong to the Daklawedi clan, which is the killer whale clan. My family lineage is from the Hutsnu Kwan, which is Angoon, Alaska. And my Tlingit name is Anish Ka, which means man who stands alone strong. That name was given to me by my grandfather, Chief Peter Johnson of Hutsnu. And I'm a Tlingit artist and carver. I've dedicated my life to this art form for the last 16 years now. And for me as an artist, you could work in both realms, both traditional and contemporary realms. And for me, my heart isn't doing the traditional Tlingit work, pieces that can exist within our culture going back thousands of years seamlessly. And that's where my heart is creating those pieces. On the other side is the more contemporary, more modern aspect of being an artist. I've collaborated with global brands like Vans, Libtech Snowboards, Volcom, Smartwool, Slow Tide, Yeti, Google. I've worked with all these global brands, and to create these steps, initially to create a working, healthy relationship with these brands, it starts with communication. Communication, open dialogue is everything. A lot of times this misappropriation with our traditional images is just from lack of communication. And so for me, working with these brands, example with Vans, we spent 4 years just in open dialogue, and they watched me as an artist and watched the work that I was doing, but we had open communication about what images are okay for public and what's not. And for Indigenous art and culture, like most Indigenous people, there's no word for art in our language even. And so what you see visually is completely integrated as part of our history and our culture. And so for us, using those images is sacred. For Tlingit art, Northwest Coast art, like most Indigenous people, we went through a really horrific period of colonization in Alaska, where everything that could have been done was done to destroy our culture and heritage. I was just in New York City last week studying pieces at the Museum of Natural History. They had 4,000 Tlingit pieces in a basement that I was studying. Pieces that left Alaska, left our culture. My grandfathers were all prolific chiefs amongst our clan. When I got into this art form, I asked my dad, I go, is there any pieces left amongst our family lineage? And there wasn't a single piece. Everything is gone. And so you take all these factors into consideration. What you do as an artist is so much more than just the visual aesthetics of the art. It's beautiful. It's some of the most beautiful art you'll ever see in the world, Indigenous art. But the history and the responsibility that comes along with doing it weighs on your shoulders. And that's a weight that I welcome, saying that I'm a Tlingit artist. And so these considerations come into play when a company, global brand wants to work with you and put these images on products and put it out there to the market. There's a proper way to do it. It starts with education. And understanding the history of Indigenous people is the first step. Like I said before, with our culture in Alaska, with colonization, disease, smallpox wiped out 3/4 of the Northwest Coast population. So how many people didn't carry on this traditional, just generational knowledge that existed for thousands of years was severed completely? How many people died without passing on this knowledge? So today we're trying to bring that back up again. Then the final piece was they sent our children to boarding schools where Indigenous youth were completely stripped of their culture. It was full cultural assimilation. My dad went to a boarding school. And so you carry these factors. So what you do, you see something that you like visually and the company loves how it looks, but all these factors that go along with education, you have to educate the brand of what the history is of this. And every Indigenous culture around the world has their backstory to this. And so it's a responsibility of the brands, responsibility of the artist to create this open, healthy dialogue and lay that out on the table. And that's something that doesn't happen quickly. It takes years to develop this. And oftentimes, working with brands, they have pretty strict deadlines you have to meet. But again, like these relationships just take time.
Thank you, James. I would like to ask the next question to Linda. I wanted to know about how you facilitate research, relational research. Daphne mentioned this as part of the WIPO steps document. And how do you address that and how do you facilitate that? But before answering, could you please reintroduce yourselves?
Morena, tēnā rā koutou katoa, ko Kupukairo te manga, ko Waitao te awa, ko Matatua te waka, ko ngā Pōtukī te hapu, ko Linda Munn ahau. And I'd like to acknowledge my sister over here, Tangi Moi Clay, who we came together. Nearly didn't get here, but we got here. And she's a renowned weaver, activist. I think most Māori are, or most Indigenous people are active in some space or another. And I forgot the question already, but I'm just going to go ahead, okay?
Please go ahead.
Thank you for the privilege of being here. It's been so welcome. We've been well looked after, and it's nice to see some whānau from home, even if it is matapihi. But anyway, on to it. Okay, so my thing is around law, L-O-R-E, versus law, L-A-W. I wake up at 2 o'clock and write this. So, the first L-A-W is supposed to protect against the misuse and the misappropriation of Indigenous narrative, motif, and art practices. Indigenous law, L-O-R-E, protects the cultural and spiritual practices of Māori, Indigenous whānau, the tikanga, So tikanga is what maintains, so we live by this, so it's hard for me to try and explain it into English, so you're just going to have to Google it. So is the law that protects the kaupapa being, you can Google that too, which in turn protects whakapapa, which is genealogy, ancestry, which is whakapapa is the whānau, hapu, iwi, our tribe. Without this, our people cease to exist and live to succeed, and are unable to live to succession the way our tupuna ancestors envisioned. We see the use of copyright and IP not in the sense of ownership, but as the right of succession. So, which is what, yeah, anyway. Am I answering any of your questions? Okay, cool. All right. The tino rangatira tanga kara or flag has been excessively used and profited from globally. You know, like you put something up and everyone thinks they own it without thinking again around where it comes from, what it holds for us as sovereign people of Aotearoa. And it's, yeah, it's been really hard to try and maintain that that it's become a bit of a beast. And what do you do with beasts? You shoot them. Anyway, hey, get Alaska, shoot a bear. I don't know, whatever. Or moose. But it is an example of I've called it, what have I called it? Excessive ignorance. You know, some people don't want to know. They think it's up for grabs. If it's in a public forum or place, it must belong to that public forum or place, but it doesn't. These motifs and the narrative are ours alone. They belong to our people, and you know, if we're kind enough, we'll let you use them at a price, and only if it is good for our people. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you. We'll hear more from you.
You asked for a minute. Good, thank you.
I would like to ask the next question to Fatuma from Burkina Faso. I would like to ask, so we understand you represent a consortium of weavers, and we would like to understand more about what kind of agreements you have. So what kind of agreements do the weaving cooperatives, the actual artisans and producers have with the international brands that they work with? And again, please first introduce yourself to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe, and thank you for this opportunity to share the Burkina Faso experience here in this panel. My name is Fatuma Sawadogo Maiga, and I represent Cabes. That is a social enterprise based in Burkina Faso. Cabes is a big producer of faso d'amfani, and it exports this faso d'amfani worldwide. And Cabes means commerce et artisanat pour le bien-être social in French. It is a consortium of 91 cooperatives with more than 3,000 members located in major cities like Ouagadougou, Bobo-Dioulasso, and Fadanguma, Bogandé, and Wayuguia, but also in rural communities. And these artisans are organic cotton spinners, dyers, and faso d'amfani weavers for the international brands, but also for the local markets. To answer to your question, indeed, having a commercial agreement between a major luxury brand and a local artisan is not an easy task. You see, the realities are different and the commercial dynamics too. So to achieve our goal of match these two realities, we created Cabes in 2014 with the support of Ethical Fashion Initiative. And Cabes is an economic interest group it is its legal status, and CABES works like a central enterprise, like an interface between the luxury brand and the artisan. So CABES is in charge of negotiating the agreement with the brand based on trade terms. You see, okay. So in practice, according to its business model, CABES is in charge of prospecting, receive order forms, organize the production by involving all the General Assembly and also technical teams in order to share the order between the artisan according to their skills, but also according to the workshops production capacities. So, but CABES remains responsible for the technical follow-up of the production, for the quality control, and also for the delivery to customer in order to ensure that everything comply with the agreement pre-signed. So once the order has been received, the client pays the balance to CABES, and then we transparently and fairly redistribute this all among the person and the workshop that were involved in the production. And after it, we do an impact assessment for the brand, so the brand can know who were involved in the production, and also what is the middle and short-term impact of this order on the life of product producers and also the communities. And yes, this is what we are doing.
Thank you.
For all the
Interesting.
brands.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for our next question, we'd like to think a little bit about the importance of building relationships and trust. The importance of trust in a mutually beneficial relationship between a company and an indigenous artist or a community. And James, I'd like to ask you, first of all, some companies have expressed that it can be challenging, for them to know who they need to approach within a community to make sure that what they want to use is appropriate, from the community's perspective. How does that work? And also you mentioned, trust before in your first intervention. So perhaps, we could expand a little bit on the trust and the importance of the artist or the community being fully on board and that being respected by the company.
Right. For like, as far as, Northwest Coast artists getting these collaborations and these contracts is actually really competitive. There's a lot of artists that do exactly what I do. It's up to the brand to do the research and see who's doing really reputable work. How you present yourself too is everything. How you showcase yourself into the world. They watch that and consider that in making their choices. For me as an artist, you dedicate your life to this. And so you take these opportunities by doing museum exhibitions, being shown in publications. The companies look at you and consider your marketability when they want to do a collaboration with you. And with these days, you could utilize social media as well. And almost all my contracts, it's in the clause where they use social media as a way to present you to the world. With Vans, same scenario. They said curate how you present yourself, because that's how we're going to present you to the world when your collection is released. And so you have to really consider all those elements when you're working with these brands, because these days, material goes out instantly into the world. It's immediate. It's easy to market online these days, and technology is moving at a really fast pace. And so as an artist, you have to be able to work in those realms. But the foundation for that, like you said, is trust. You have to trust the brand when you have these discussions, when you have your contracts. you have to trust exactly how you're going to be presented. And you have to trust that how your culture is presented and how you are presented as an artist, they're going to do it properly. And that just takes time. It takes time to establish trust and build on trust. All the brands that I work with are my friends. You know, I could text people at LibTech and Vans and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is exactly what I did when I said I was coming here to speak. I told them what I was doing and how I was involved. So it's on this personal level. And the brands that I work with also align with my lifestyle. They're exactly brands that I use. And so like that relationship is really organic. So it's not, you're not trying to fit a square into a circle with this. You know, the brands, when they consider the artists, they have to consider what that artist's lifestyle is like. And if that's going to align with the collection or whatever you're doing. You know, working with LibTech snowboards, you know, I'm a lifelong snowboarder. And so it's like a dream working with LibTech, and they're a global snowboard brand. You could probably go into a shop here in Geneva and see my snowboard in there. And so like that, those relationships are, they're fostered over years of time. And I have complete trust in LibTech, the owner. Not only we use Indigenous art in the graphic, but he gives me a paragraph at the bottom of the board where he said, write whatever you want about your culture and heritage. And they have never once edited it, but they put the whole paragraph on the bottom of the snowboard. And so, you know, when that board's sold in Japan or here in Geneva, someone might see the graphic in the shop and say, wow, that's interesting. But then they could read the paragraph and learn about my culture and heritage. And so it puts Tlingit art and my culture on this really incredible platform that goes way beyond my reach. And I have complete trust in that company that they're going to do that every year. And I just finished my 7th graphic with them. And so like, that's a really a prime example of a healthy working relationship.
Thank you, James. I would now like to ask another question to Fatuma, because we're here to talk about trade and economic sustainability. So I think an important part of these steps is also remuneration. So how does CABIS ensure fair remuneration for the producers who are behind the work?
Okay, thank you, Chloe. Fortunately, the brand trust in CABIS, the brands we are working with like Loewe and Ferragamo and so on, Camper and many others brands are responsible brands. So as a social enterprise in fashion textile, when we received the payment from these brands, we are placing a big an important place for the payment of the weavers member. Like we are paying them basis on the living wage, because as a social enterprise, we are sure that it's important for our members to have good living condition and also a good working condition. And to do this, we have making calculation of this, and we ensure that the payment artisan receive is well distributed. I don't know if I understand well your question.
You answered very well. Thank you.
Okay, so
And maybe I have a follow-up question. Are there ways where sometimes your partners have given some kind of benefit that is not economical?
yeah,
Some
sure.
other ways?
Yeah, something that I want to add before is the second part of this repartition, because we are a fashion brand, and we are working with fashion brand, I mean, and we want to have design, to develop design and develop new products. So one of the important place we put in our enterprise is also a product development. So we reserve a part of this benefit too for this kind of production. And yes, to answer, sorry, to your question about non-benefit, non-economic benefit. Yes, the non-monetary benefits that communities receive are many. To give some examples, first of all, collaboration with luxury brands make artisan more creative. They try to design, and they are always innovating. Due to this collaboration, for instance, we are now working with improved large looms to meet the needs of designers. And then it's also good when a community or a cooperative name is associated with a big brand. In Burkina Faso, for instance, there is Tenga, that is a village known for its weaving skills. And many important people visit this community because the women there dressed great personalities through designers like United Arrows, Stella Jean, Duro, and others. Can I tell an anecdote? Okay, to tell you an anecdote, a journalist once visited us in Burkina Faso because she heard that a skirt made by Stella Jean in Faso d'Anfani, and this fabrics was produced by a weaver member of Cabes. And so when we asked Raketa is the surname of this lady, and if she knows Beyonce, she replied, I didn't before, but now, thanks to my job, I do. And from today, I will listen to her music. So you can see it's really, she was very proud, and actually it's really very gratifying to work with brands. It's a non-monetary benefit, but it's really important. And also, if I can add something, for a country with security issues like mine, still working with fashion houses sends a message of resilience to around the world, to say that it's really difficult. It's very hard. It's very difficult, but we are working. We're still working, and we need to work. So yes, the benefits are many. Thank you.
Great. Linda, so as a Maori artist, and in the context of commercial collaborations with companies, it can be fashion companies or other companies, I want to ask you about the importance of acknowledgement. You know, obviously it's important, but what would also for you be proper ways of you as an artist to be acknowledged, Maori culture to be acknowledged in a commercial collaboration?
I think good consultation is key, you know, and knowing something about the culture. But when it comes to the flag, there's been a lot of misappropriation, and I've found it printed on all sorts of garments around the world. And there's kind of like prerequisites around it never being worn around the bottom half of your body because of the content and the concept, I suppose, around the flag. Because I wrote something. So tino rangatiratanga in practice speaks to the autonomy and self-determination of all First Nations people, including Māori, Māori ora, which is peace. So it's quite, people will ask me around replicating the flag on garments, and it comes down to the kaupapa, or how is it going to benefit community. So I always, most times I give my permission, because one of the key ways to get permission from me is to say that it is going to either protect, benefit. Women's Refuge is one of my key charities, and any profit made from the selling or designs on garments of the flag goes back into Women's Refuge. It'll go into help food bank. So really, really important to me. It's a little bit different because the whole point of this design was to help our community. So I'm quite, yeah, I stick to that. But I design lots of other things and that can go. But the tino is around people and community and safeguarding te ao Māori. But China have printed a whole heap of flags and things, and it gets sold in New Zealand. But it's kind of like a funny place because I let that go because not all flags in New Zealand made tino flags are like $100. It's a lot of money for whānau because that's their week's groceries. So for them to be able to go and buy a $5 flag made in China means everything to me, because it means that they're proud to be who they are, to be able to wear their flag, because it's ours for Māori. So it's kind of a funny little thing. Kia ora.
Before we open the floor for questions, because I see we have quite a nice audience here, and I'm sure they're very curious and have questions to ask to our panelists. But I was wondering if you could each perhaps give some words of advice or a message you'd like to share with a company who'd be interested in commercial collaborations with your communities or with yourselves as artists. How should they, go about it? Like in a few words of advice.
I think these days you see how much everyone's just taking. In our culture, there's a balance. There's a balance in our clan system. We have Eagle and Raven as our two top clans. Our culture is matrilineal, where you follow your mother's clan, then you marry the opposite. And that preserves the balance in our culture. The foundation in the art form is completely based off of balance, this give and take. The nucleus of our culture is called kuik. Kuik is our potlatch. And Tlingit and kuik means to give. And that's where you'd see the real intention of our culture and art form on its purest display. We'd wear our regalia, we'd wear the carved clan hats, we'd sing our songs, and every guest that would show up to a kuik would have to be fed as well. And so that concept of giving, the wealth in our culture was determined not by how much you could acquire, it was by how much you could give away. And so we're talking this concept of trade and balance. I think that's a great lesson moving forward with this. I did a collaboration with a group called Portugal the Man. They're a music group. And the lead singer, we created the theme for the collaboration, and it was Indigenous knowledge is the way forward. And so Indigenous people all across the globe lived in this balance. These days, you see how out of balance we are. Pretty easy. How out of balance we are with the environment, how out of balance we are with each other. The way we interact, we're out of balance. And so Indigenous culture, Indigenous knowledge, maintaining this balance in all aspects, we could apply to so many different levels these days.
Wow. I think because we're kind of all the same, but we're a little bit different on our approach. And with me, there's a bit of a process, but it's not a hard and fast one. Sometimes it's because I don't like you. It's easy as that. Or how you practice, it's just, and but for me, it's community. Kaupapa is everything. Community is everything. Yeah, and giving is a big part of being Māori. You come to Aotearoa, you come on the marae, and it's a bit like the potlatch. We will feed you, we look after you, because that's the manner in which we give a gift. It's not always about the money, how to make money, but it's to make sure you feel safe, you're fed. And for me, that's everything. And I think if someone wants, like, these companies have approached me and bands, which I've said yes to, but they've got to benefit my people. They have to benefit Māori communities. And at the moment, we're having a really challenging time with the current government, who are a bunch of racists. So the flag has become more and more of something of resilience to our people, you know. So, but I'm pretty easy when it comes to people ask me. It depends on what they want, the kaupapa, and it's not difficult. Ta-da.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I think that my message will be for the brands, but also for the communities like Cabes, according to our experience. For the brand, I think that we are happy to share our cultural heritage and our acknowledge, and we need to find the balance between Faso Damfani, Burkina Faso culture, but also with the fashion, because these brands are putting light on our culture, and it's very interesting for us. And yes, we need to work with responsible brands that respect our work, our social position, but also our cultural heritage. And you see in Burkina Faso, the state have a local brand called Faso Damfani. This is a label. And my outfit is one of these design that is protected. Let me wake up. You can see me. My dress is made in a fabric called Naporumpende. I don't think that you can repeat it. Naporumpende is a traditional loincloth reserved to queens like Mrs. Lankwande. She is a queen. And yes, but now everybody can wear it, but we need to protect this design. Thanks God, the brands that are working with us respect it, and they do not ask us to reproduce it like industrial way. They keep it traditionally. And this is the fight of my government to protect our cultural heritage. And we have like 400 designs like this that are protected. So it's important for the brand that are working with communities like Burkina Faso to keep this heritage and to respect it. We are ready to create, we are ready to innovate, but we need also to show what we are doing. And if I can give an advice to workshops like Cabes, it is to have clear terms of trade, because these agreements are very important for negotiation, for production, for payment terms, for lead times, and so on. So put everything right and sign it before doing something. Thank you.
We now have a little bit of time for a Q&A. If any of you have any questions for the panelists, please. No questions? Yes. Please.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm supposed to ask questions, but I have them, so I'll ask. James, you mentioned about the 4,000 items in the Natural Museum History. That's in DC, right? The one in New York. Okay. Can you get it back?
Yeah, when I spoke about colonization of Alaska, a lot of our sacred, like I'm a carver for my clan. Atkash Ak is carver. As a carver, you're really highly regarded amongst your people, because the history of our people was a visual language that was told through the art form. And these stories and history is told through any medium, whether it be a mask, it'd be a bent wood box, a paddle, a kutia, totem pole. all these objects tell the history and stories of our people. And during colonization, a lot of those pieces were just taken. And it wasn't just a couple pieces, there's thousands upon thousands of pieces that left Alaska. And so today, as an artist, the only way to see them is to search it out and find it. But there is repatriation that occurs, especially our sacred clan objects, which is called atu. And those objects have been passed down for generations, and they're gone out of Alaska. And so like those things that you consider as an artist, it's so much bigger than just the visual aesthetics that you're doing. You're carrying on this culture and this tradition where everything that could have been done was done to destroy it. And so, yeah, it's when you go to those institutions like Natural History and, in Chicago, the Field Museum, Burke Museum, Denver Art Museum, all these places, they have thousands upon thousands of our clan history there in basements. And it's emotional. It's heartbreaking to walk through there. I feel like crying right now just talking about it. But that's, again, like I can't stress enough, that's the responsibility that comes along with using our imagery in these commercial applications. It's a big responsibility.
Can I add to that?
Sure. Just let me, when you can get it back. I'm sorry, I'm a lawyer and I tend to be very,
Right.
I get off on, I get very angry. So the ability to get it back, you need to sit with some high-end lawyers and just put together, just like when the Jews got back all their stuff, after the Holocaust, you can get it back. Their legal precedent for getting it. Sorry, anyway, sorry, Linda, sorry.
We have a similar dilemma as well. And we have taonga that's sitting in Burke, and it sounds easy, let's just go get them. So, we've had moko mokai, which are the heads, which we've got a few back, but it's huge. We're bringing back our ancestors, our moko, and they've been laying somewhere in a cupboard and they have not had the right kind of rituals and ceremony around it. So it is really deep. And I know I've been a little bit flippant because that's just the way I am, like yourself as a lawyer. Because I find it really hard and emotional to talk about our customary ways and narrative. So for me, Tino is about embracing all of that, and we are working on, we're working on the IP and the copyright for our flag at the moment. I forgot to mention that, sorry. It's a biggie. But yeah, it's an emotional thing to want to bring your people home, and we've been sitting in dusty old museums in Europe for over 100 years. Yeah, so thank you. Kia ora.
Thank you. I saw the gentleman over there. Yes, please.
Hi there. My name's Hugh. I'm from Canada. Another legal question, recognizing that you guys are artists and business people, not lawyers. But when you talk about your collaborations and protecting your traditional cultural expressions and your traditional knowledge, it sounds like it's largely based on good faith cooperation with the brands you work with. Are the legal protections sufficient to protect against misappropriation, or is that an area that's lacking right now?
All the contracts I sign, it's covers the protection of the design in all areas. And so these are not handshake contracts. It's all written out. And we discuss how it's going to be represented, down to the exact color, the exact hue of the color is represented correctly. And so that's all in written legal documents, along with compensation, all these aspects that go along with these contracts.
I think there is the lady there with the jacket. Yes, please go ahead.
Thanks very much. This was fantastic. Thanks so much to WIPO and the ITC for bringing this together. My question is about the concept of succession that I think, Linda, you talked about. And I was thinking about it in terms of getting the youth and the next generation interested and invested in what you were doing. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how that plays out in your own individual areas, and what WIPO and ITC and folks like us, so I'm Canada's ambassador to the WTO, UNCTAD, ITC, and other economic organizations in Geneva. And so what we can do to actually amplify what you do amongst that next generation. I'd be super interested to hear anything you have to say about that. Thanks.
I think because we work with rangatahi or young people quite often, we work from babies to not so young people. And so we have our kohanga reo, we have a kura kaupapa, we have whare kura, which are our stages of schooling, and then they'll go on to wānanga. But I think the most important thing when you're working with future generations is to be more relevant. You have to be always aware of new technologies. I make it my business to be aware around what's happening globally on trend, and because I'm nosy and I like that stuff. But, you know, and it has to be attractive to our young ones, and not so young, because you want to bring in those. We have a lot of Māori who are being disconnected and disaffected by colonization and just removed from families and their own marae. So you have to be relevant to them to make them feel protected enough to come back home and be able to be looked after. But yeah, relevant, gotta be.
Maybe I can share Burkina Faso experience. In my country, everything starts at school. The government decide that every Monday, children must wear some Faso Damfani fabrics at school. And it's a kind of message that we want to share with them, that we need to be proud of our long cloth, our fabrics. And it's also a very good thing because it creates work for weavers. Every woman is weaving now because it's people need to start school in the few weeks. And also, I think that ladies can, if you discuss with her, they can explain to you that it's important for mothers to explain and to train the girls, their daughters, and also boys, how to weave and how to keep this heritage. I think that it's difficult to find a Burkinabe who don't have a Faso Damfani. It's like an identity, an ID card for us now. So yes, we are trying to train a young generation. Thank you.
Thank you.
For us, like for Indigenous youth, Tlingit youth, the companies I work with, we donate a portion of these collaborations back to my tribe in Alaska that specifically helps Indigenous youth. Vans, we created a snow program that gets the youth up on the mountain to learn how to ski and snowboard, where everything is completely paid for. We've done that for 3 years now from that donation. And, you know, that's Slow Tide, a surf brand. We donate to a surf club in Yakutat, Alaska, that gets Tlingit youth out to surf. And so the youth need to be inspired. They need to be embraced. And you lead by example, by the way you live your life, the way you carry yourself. It's exciting to see the youth because this whole process is reclaiming our culture. It's reclaiming the traditions. And the youth are the next generation. And so it's important for them to show that they're supported and keep them inspired and embrace all the work that they're doing.
Great. Thank you very much to our 3 panelists on behalf of WIPO and the ITC. Unfortunately, we need now to end this panel because we have clear instructions from the organizers that we need to finish at 10:10 sharp. But I can see that there are a lot of questions and a lot of interest for for this important topic and to interact with our panelists. And you'll have the opportunity to meet with them. They'll be here throughout the whole day. You can come and chat with them at the experience space, and they'll be very, very happy to meet you and to get the opportunity to exchange with you. So thank you very much once again for sharing your perspectives. And yeah, thank you to our audience for the questions and the interest.